15 in 15 Reading Challenge. This is the 15 in 15 kickoff on Tuesday, January 27th, 2015 at 7 p.m. in the activity room at the Flint Memorial Library in North Reading. We are having some fun and excitement back into our reading. Representatives from Random House Penguin Publishing will join us to talk about the hottest new releases and soon-to-be published books for 2015. You could walk away with an advanced reader's copy of another exciting door prize. You'll also get raffle tickets for our monthly 15 in 15 drawings just by attending. So welcome!
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to try to do this without a microphone, and if you find that you can't hear us, I imagine you wouldn't hear me, but if you can't hear us, we will use the microphone. But just going to let a couple other people get settled, and we're so thrilled that you're here tonight. So Danielle is going to start off the evening.
Welcome. We're so excited to have you all here. This is the kickoff to our new adult reading program. It's called 15 in 15, and it's a joint sponsored program between the Flint Memorial Library and the Friends of the Flint Memorial Library. I'm the president of the Friends, and you'll see many of the friends here tonight. Many of us are volunteering, but also many of us are taking part in the program itself. And I will hand it over to Sharon, who is our lovely director of the Flint Memorial Library, and she's going to explain the program to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. We are so thrilled. Such a great turnout. We weren't sure what to expect, but obviously you handled the first challenge by getting here the second time, so we know you're up for the challenge. So I just want to briefly explain the 15 in 15 challenge. It is very easy. I'm going to do it very briefly because you were all handed a packet when you came in, and it has the instructions on it, the rules, which are simple, basic. It is the honor system. It's not about what you read or how you read it. We just want people to come together and take time for themselves to read. We're all so busy. We all make sure we make time for everyone else, and this is a challenge for you to take time for yourself this year and do some reading. And along the way, we're going to have incentives and different events to keep you motivated and to keep us all coming together as a community. The two things I can just tell you when you're reading the instructions is you can either keep track of your books on a printed sheet, or you can go online at our website and click on the 15 in 15 tab and log your books that way. And as you finish a book, you can come to the library and fill out a raffle ticket. And once a month, on the 15th, we're going to do a drawing, and you win a $15 Amazon gift card. And we're going to do that monthly. And then at the end of the year, we're going to have a grand prize, which will be worth about $250. It'll be really exciting. We're not going to tell you what it is yet, because we're not sure what it is yet. But it's going to be great. I did the one of the words. No filter. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. So before we start, we are so thrilled tonight to have Lesley Vasilio. She is Penguin Random House Publishers representative, and she's going to talk to us about the new books that are coming out or new books that have just come out, so we can have some great ideas for reading. And before she starts, we're going to do a couple of raffle tickets to get everyone going. You're going to pull your raffles and selection of prizes up here. The books will be raffled off as well. Yeah. Everyone have their tickets ready? First one, 790831. All right, that's on. Oh, it's on, okay. Yay. Come on up and pick a prize from the basket. We're going to do a couple more before we start. Next one. 790905. Yay! One more. 790827. And the last one, we're going to do more throughout the night. We'll just start with these.
790-916.
Boy, she came in late too. So hold on to your tickets. We're going to get started. Lesley, are you ready? Ready? Okay. Lesley, we take a break from the raffle now, and then the real reason we came. So, we'll close the lights and get ready. Lesley Vasilio is going to start. Thank you very much for inviting me here. And I'm astounded by the number of people who showed up, given that it's, we've had such weather lately, and it's the Constitution of New Englanders that you can come out on a night like tonight just to listen to somebody talk about books. There's nothing better than that. Thank you very, very much for coming out. You'll have to remind me to change the image because I keep forgetting to hit the button. But what we're going to do is, we do have one copy left of In the Kingdom of the Ice. What I did is I tried to select some nonfiction, some fiction, some mystery, some memoir, history titles. I've done a few of these, and it seemed as if people came up to me afterwards and said, well, gosh, can you recommend some fiction, nonfiction, or some mystery, or some fantasy, things like that. So I thought, well, this is a really broad spectrum of titles. And so you've got a copy of all the titles I'm going to talk about on these sheets. Scribble notes on them, keep them. These are pretty much books that are going to come out actually a few of them have actually come out last year, the end of last year. In the Kingdom of Ice is one of them that actually went on sale. It turned out in September that we put it on sale. But it was one of my favorite nonfiction books of last year. So I decided I would put some books that have already come out, and then I think most of the rest of the books are coming out between January and I think we might actually go into July. At the end here. So you've got a whole bunch of books to look forward to. So the first one, as I said, in the Kingdom of Ice. Back in, let me get the date right now, 1879. This is the first polar expedition. There was a thought at the time that the North Pole, if you could get beyond the ice, was an open polar sea, it was called. So the U.S. government decided to build a sailing ship that had basically 3 hulls in it, understanding that it would take them more than a year to get up there and explore, get into this open polar sea, and come out on the other side, basically. So they left somewhat late. They were charged with searching for someone who had gotten lost doing the same thing. So when the first winter hit, they were not very far. They were about 1,200 miles north of the last known civilization, the last known group of hunters and such that were up as they were going up the coast. They spent the winter encased in ice, which they had expected to do, but they had a doctor on board, they had dogs for sleds, they had plenty of provisions, and they were set for the winter. It was their understanding that in the springtime the ice would melt, they would be free, and they would continue on their journey. The first spring came, summer, as you would call it up in the Arctic, came, and they were still enclosed in ice. They spent 3 years before the ship disintegrated completely. And now they are 1,200 miles north of the last known civilization. They have to get back there. Of the 84 men that started, 12 of them made it back. It is a remarkable story. I read it all in one weekend. I sat down and thought, okay, I'm just going to keep going because this is such an exciting book. It really, Hampton Sides makes it read like it's an adventure story. It is an adventure story, but it's nonfiction.
Okay, we'll go a little faster. That was just mine. Would you like to pull
Let me do that.
we've got one copy left up here.
This is for a free copy of
In the Kingdom of Ice.
Seven 90820.
Okay, so we'll move along. The next one is a novel, but the novelist actually did spend time in North Korea as an English teacher. It's the story of a young woman in 2011 who went to, and it has to be fictionalized because a lot of stories, even though there's so much truth to them, they take license and liberty, so it ends up being published as a novel. She went to North Korea to teach English in the only elite school that they have in North Korea. All but 270 students who were going to school in North Korea all the rest of the students were put out into the fields to work. They needed people to work in the fields. But these elite 270 students were able to stay and learn. And slowly but surely, she starts to realize, this was at the very end of Kim Jong-il, his reign, and the indoctrination that they go through day after day after day, she was slowly being indoctrinated into it. But yet what she tried to do is impart Western ways to them, but in a very, very general, very, very easygoing way, because of course anything that you bring into North Korea is if you're trying to bring anything Western into North Korea, you will be arrested. So it's a novelization of what her life was actually like for those 6 months that she stayed in North Korea. So anyway, John Cleese. Everyone knows John Cleese. Monty Python, Fawlty Towers. This is his memoir from his humble beginnings in a small English village to Cambridge University, and then on to being one of the most well-known comics worldwide. I'm sure you remember the Minister of Silly Walks. If you're old enough, you'll remember these things. The Minister of Silly Walks, the owner of the dead parrot. He along with the other pythons were probably the biggest driving force for comedy in their time. And so he not only looks at his rise to being this legend in comedy, he looks at what makes things funny and how you can write and how you perform and you make the everyday things really funny. And it's really fun book to read if you remember anything about Monty Python. Switching completely, Schubert's Winter Journey. There is a place in, I think it's Austria or Switzerland, I'm not too sure where, one of those two, that every year a group of people go by train, by musher, by any way they possibly can to get to this very small hamlet in the mountains. This is where Schubert wrote his last piece, if you will. It was a collection of 24 poems that he put to music. What Bostrich does, who is a leading historian and has written an awful lot about Schubert and performed this many, many times as well. He writes about the last 6 months of Schubert's life, which is when he actually did go and write this, and how melancholy and what influenced him and why it remained one of his biggest pieces. If you like music history or classical music, this is a wonderful book to pick up, and NPR is already on board with having him on. I mean, it's an amazing book on an amazing piece of classical music. Switching a little bit different, Dreaming Spies. Laurie King is a very popular novelist. She writes, I will, thank you, I saw you, thank you very much. There we go. Dreaming Spies, Laurie King. She's written a number of books, and she has 2 or 3 different series. This is a book from her Sherlock Holmes Mary Russell series, if anybody is familiar with it. And it's a mystery. It starts out in a small village in England and then goes to Japan and goes all over all of the globe. But she's a really great mystery writer, and I tell you, if you read one of hers, you will read all of the Sherlock Holmes Mary Russell books. There's about, I think, 6 or 7 of them now. Holly LaCroix's half-brother. Holly lives in Newton, so she's our local author. Her first book came probably 2 or 3 years ago. It was called The Swimming Pool. This one is also set in New England. It's the story of a young man who comes from the South, trained as a teacher, gets a job in this very small, prestigious boarding school in a small town in New England. And he's trying to fit into this very closed society. And he falls in love with the chaplain's daughter, but he realizes that this can't work. She leaves the school. Fast forward 10 years now, his very charismatic half-brother, who has followed in his footsteps, has now come to teach at the college as well. The chaplain's daughter, comes back to teach there too. So basically what the story is, it's about family loyalty, it's about love, it's about misplaced ideas. She writes a really good human interest kind of story. In Wilderness. This is fiction, and it's a debut work. This is her first novel. It's the story of a young woman who was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and she decides to leave the rat race, spends the last 6 months in her cabin up in the Appalachian Mountains. When she gets there, she realizes that there's someone squatting in her cabin. He runs out, and she thought that was the end of it. She wasn't going to see him again. Well, as things would happen, he is a very troubled Vietnam vet who's found some solace in just living spiritually in the woods. And there's a big storm coming. And she knows where he is now. He's in this lean-to kind of shack on her property. She goes to bring firewood and food to him, and the storm hits earlier than expected. So she's trapped in this hut with him. And it's the story of what they actually bring to each other's lives, how they both, in many different ways, heal each other. Love and Other Ways of Dying. Michael Paterniti is a great nonfiction writer. This is a collection of essays, and it's about love, it's about dying, it's about an 8'1" Serbian. It's a bunch of essays about life. It's a powerful way to see the world when you read essays. And he is one of the best essayists that I've read in quite a while. Okay. Girl in the Dark is a memoir. It is the story of a young British woman who one day realizes that as she's sitting at her job, which is working with a computer, that her face is burning, and she doesn't quite understand why this is happening. Within a matter of days, she comes to realize that any kind of fluorescent light, sunlight, is causing a severe reaction, and any exposed skin is blistering and burning. She has a and this is a memoir, she has a very, very rare condition where she is basically allergic to all forms of light. Daylight, fluorescent, even when it's really peaking, she has difficulty opening the refrigerator because the refrigerator light will cause her to have a reaction. But it's not only the story of her condition, it's the story of her life. She was young, she was on her fast track, she had just bought a home, and she had something like this happen to her. And it's the choices that she's made, how she handles it. She was involved in a relationship, what does she do with the relationship? It's a really amazing story of inner strength and how you find this inner strength within you and how you cope with something that seems insurmountable. When it's flaring up really badly, she has to stay in very, very deep twilight So she couldn't read, she could only listen to audiobooks. She couldn't use her computer, she couldn't do anything. So it's a really incredible life, but it's not a sad story. It's how she's learning to cope with all of this. Deadweight, Eric Larson. If anybody's read Devil in the White City and a couple of other books that I can't think of right now. This is about the sinking of the Lusitania. On May 1915, the Lusitania left New York with a bunch of very influential, important people on board. They were all very nervous because, of course, in 1915 the war was going on, but the captain of the Lusitania assumed, wrongly, that the Germans would respect the code of the seas, which is that it's a civilian ship and it should be allowed to make its way to Liverpool. The Germans had decided to take the war to the next level, and they had declared open war on any ships that were anywhere around Britain. So it goes back and forth, the hunted and the hunter. The hunter being the German U-boat that eventually sunk the Lusitania, and the captain of that boat, and the captain of the Lusitania. And it's the glamour and the glitz and it's the wonderful era that, you know, everything is fresh and new and young. And then it's the realities and the horrors of war. Eric Larson is an amazing writer in that you read a book and you believe that you're reading dialogue, but you realize there is no dialogue. It's just how he can phrase things to make you feel as if you're reading conversations between people when it isn't in fact. It's a remarkable. Hausfrau. Probably, it's a modern day Anna Karenina, basically what it comes down to. It's a young expat from America who moves with her family and her husband to Austria, and she's very unhappy there. And she lives 10 years not learning the language, not really communicating or interacting with anyone there. And then one day she decides, well, she has to take control, and she's going to go out and she's going to experience what's around her. So she starts to take classes in the language. She starts to branch out. She then starts to branch out and has all of these unusual sexual liaisons. And if you read Anna Karenina, you know how that ends, and this one ends the same way.
Is this fiction?
It is. This one is. Although, who knows? Becoming Steve Jobs. This is Brent Schlender. This is a very difficult name. He was a very good friend of Steve Jobs for 25 years. He has over 100 hours of interviews, personal interviews, with Jobs. Jobs is considered to be one of the most famous and visionary CEOs in history. And what this is a collection of interviews with his friends, interviews with other people he worked with, industry insiders, people who knew him, and why and who he was and how he came to be who he was.
We're going to draw another prize.
Okay.
On that page? I was going to say. My sister Rachel told me that.
790751.
I don't know if you had a chance to look at the prizes, but there's some really very cool things up here. Our next number is
790723.
Someone has
Someone
it.
else to
No.
Say it
I
again.
know.
790723.
Did you win again?
No.
All right, we'll leave that one.
All right.
Okay. We'll do another one.
790829.
Or we put these in here as you came in, so I'm not sure.
Somebody has to have these.
I do, sorry. Oh, okay.
This one's a little different. The theme is actually the Loch Ness Monster. It's the story of three young people just at the beginning of world, but they're very elite. They're very they come from a very wealthy family. They embarrass their father at a big New Year's Eve party. So to try and win him back, they decide they're going to set out and discover the Loch Ness Monster. It was their father's mission, who he tried for years to verify the existence of the monster and never could. So they feel that if they can go and they can justify his father's search for all these years, that he will favor them back again. So there's a war raging on, and these three are in Scotland, and the two men are going off every day looking for the Loch Ness Monster. Well, there's a real monster that's devastating Europe, and that's Hitler. So she juxtaposes very nicely this very elite favored world and the harsh realities of the war. She's a wonderful storyteller. House of Echoes, for those people who like those really creepy psychological thrillers. There was a book last year called The Winter People, and I'm sure it's at the library here because it turned out to be a big bestseller. And it was, I like them creepy, but I don't like them so creepy that they're not believable at all. This was perfect. This had it was set in Vermont in the dead of winter, and it had just enough creep element to it. And I sat down and I started it, and I finished it. I started on Saturday, finished it on Sunday. It was one of those ones that you just have to keep reading. This is the same way, House of Echoes. It's the story of a failed novelist and his family, his young family, his wife and his children. And they live in New York. The first novel was hugely popular, but they're running out of money, and the second one failed miserably. So the novelist's aunt dies, leaves him this property in upstate New York. And they decide, well, they're going to start again. They're going to go up to this house in upstate New York, and they're going to start a life all over again, which they do. But the minute they get up there, strange sightings, strange things begin to happen. The creep element starts, and it's just enough. Doesn't overdo it, just enough. And the premise is, what have we done? We made this terrible mistake. But it's really fun, and it comes to a great, ripping conclusion. What You Left Behind. This is it's a mystery. It's not really a thriller. It's a mystery about, it takes place in a very small English town, and this young boy of 19 commits suicide. And the town is devastated because it's a small, very close-knit town. Immediately after that, 5 more young teens commit suicide. And it's this perplexing problem that none of these other 5 children in any way indicated that they were troubled or were having problems. And then it stops. Everything is fine. 10 years goes by. There's another young teen that is decided that he's going to commit suicide. And 5 more children, teens, after that also commit suicide. Enter this detective who is on holiday, hears about the whole thing, and decides to find out what's behind all of this. And there's a very interesting premise that's behind all of this. Okay, Spinster. This is a memoir. It's a little more than a memoir, though. It's probably it's a really good look at exploring culture and the way we think of, in some instances, the way some people think about unmarried women. Famous women from the past, and has tied them in to very famous women in the present, all of whom remained unmarried, and how they had very full, fulfilling lives and enjoyed their lives. In a broader way, though, she also looks at the culture and the society and how the stigma, there's still a stigma attached to all of this. It's a great look at just how we think we've changed, but we haven't really changed all that much. She's a very good she has a lot of good commentary on modern day culture. Man in Profile is Joseph Mitchell, who was an incredible, he captured in his New Yorker stories, he captured these incredible everyday people in New York City. He wrote from the 1930s through the 1960s, and people waited for the New Yorker to come to read his columns because though they were everyday, regular people, they stood out because they were unique in every single way. And he just had this way of being able to capture who the essence of these people really were. And then in 1960, he stopped writing. And for the next 30 years had one of the biggest writer's blocks that anyone has ever heard of. He would go to work every day at the New Yorker, he would sit there and he would write, but there was nothing he ever wrote beyond that point that was publishable. It just wasn't there anymore. But he's so well known and so dynamic and so revered for the way he was able to capture people. One minute he has it, the next minute it's gone. I threw in some lighter summer reading stuff too, because now we're talking about summer, and it's fun just to pick up a book and scream through a book and decide, oh, that was a great read. So that's what I Take You is. It's pretty much a modern day Bridget Jones. She is having a ball with her life. She's a young, engaged woman in New York City. She's doing everything she wants to do. She's having the time of her life, but she's engaged, so she's also planning her marriage. Except she's not really into this whole marriage thing. So she has to make some really hard decisions throughout the whole book. And it's fun to watch her succeed and fail and succeed and fail and just to get a slice of her life. It's like I said, it's a quick summer read. And then on the Burning Edge, not a quick summer read. This is, let me get the timing right, the name of it actually. It is the Yarnell Hill fire that killed those 19 wilderness firefighters in Arizona. And it is an in-depth study of what happened. How did this happen? What were the existing problems in the way these kind of wildfires are fought that precipitated this problem? It's a report on the incident. It's an in-depth look at the dangers that these firefighters walked into, and it's also a look at how these 19 deaths of firefighters have impacted firefighters throughout the country. I mean, it was an incredible loss for them. And then back to light summer reading, Nancy Thayer. She is local, Massachusetts, and the story is set in Nantucket in the summer. Unfortunately, this unattached woman with 2 children and this unattached man with 2 children rent the same house for the summer, and neither one of them are willing to give it up. So what happens after that? Where are we? Are we almost close to the next? No, I've got a few more to go. 4 more to go. This is an interesting juxtaposition, The Girl at War and The Book of Aaron. The Girl at War, they're both novels. The Girl at War is the story of a young Croatian girl. She's 10 years old. She's living or attempting to live through the war in Croatia and the devastation and the horrors, and she realizes that the only thing that will save her and her family is if they can escape to America, which they do successfully. And she decides when she's in college to go back 10 years later and see where she came from and try and figure out who she really is, because she's felt very detached. The next one, Book of Aaron, is about a young boy. It's a novel. Jim Shepard teaches out in Williamstown, Mass. It's the story of a young boy during World War II, and his family is all brought into the Polish slums and the ghetto, and they're all put behind the wall. And one by one, his family, the rest of his family disappears. And there's only him left. And he bands together with another group of orphans, and they try and survive until this one doctor, Jewish doctor, who's also in the ghetto, is put in charge by the Nazis. He's put in charge of the children to bring them all to an orphanage and take care of them. Well, that only lasts so long. I mean, it sounds like a very depressing downer story, but it really isn't. He's an amazing literary writer and captures not only the horrors of World War II Polish slums, but also the humor. They have to live with humor as well. And as they're all being herded onto a train, the doctor's wish is that somehow Aaron whoops, how did that happen? Aaron has escaped, and he'll be able to tell the story of these orphans after the war. Naomi Novik, Uprooted, is a standalone book. She has written a series called Tremere, and it's a fantasy series, and she's very, very popular for that. But and that series is like a Beauty and the Beast kind of series. It's fantasy. This one is a standalone. This is a fairy tale as well. And then finally, Knockoff. I love this one. This was another one I read all in one weekend. It's sort of a reverse of The Devil Wears Prada. It's the story of a woman coming back from a medical leave. She is the editor of a glamour-like magazine in New York City. She comes back to find that her former assistant, has come back from Harvard Business School, has been helping out and running the magazine while she's been absent, has turned her 734-page glamorous magazine into an app. And it's all gone digital. And she is left in the woods because she is not up on digital at all. And so behind the whole idea is the former assistant, wants to drive her out. She's got two choices. She can either learn or walk away. She quietly decides to learn. Okay, a few more books. So, Water Night. It's an interesting novel about near future, and the premise is that the Colorado River is being totally controlled by one corporation, and they're diverting water to their own communities that they're building. In the meantime, Phoenix is dry. There is no water in Phoenix, and one by one, these big cities are running out of water. It's a what-if kind of story. What if this happened? What would happen? What would society look like? In the novel, no one from the Southwest is allowed to pass beyond Texas. If you have lived there when this all started, you're stuck there. So you're basically a prisoner there. And there's a water knife is someone who goes to these big cities and literally cuts their water off and leaves them truly high and dry. And the problem is he works for the big corporation. The big corporation is in danger of being one-upped by another controlling entity further up the Colorado River. So it's a race to see who gets to the water. But it's not a pretty picture, one way or the other. It's definitely not a pretty picture. But it's, not actually that far away from what the truth might be one day. Annie Barrows, she is the co-writer of the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society, blah, 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 blah. And everybody's been waiting for another book. This one is a little different, but it still has that same warmth that if you did read Potato, as we call it, the Potato Peel book, if you read that, you know that that was a series of letters. This is not a series of letters, but it has that same warm, family, homey feeling to it. It's set right after the Depression, and the WPA has a writer's project that this young woman is charged to go to a very small town in the South and write the history of this town. She's very privileged, and she's a senator's daughter, and she really doesn't think she should be lowered to do something like this. But she gets there, and she starts to assimilate into the town, and she starts to learn the stories and the histories behind these people in this small town. And it really, don't be put off by the fact that it's a southern town. I know a lot of people, it's like, it's a southern fiction, I don't want to read it. It really could be a small town anywhere. And it's the secrets and the untold stories that are behind this one family in this small rural town. It's really a good read. A Force for Good, Danielle Goldman, who's written a number of books about intelligence, the intelligence quotients, things like that. This has absolutely nothing to do with that. This is the Dalai Lama. It is his vision, it is his quest, it is what drives him, it is his principles, it is why he is the visionary leader that he is, and that the ideas that he has that could lead us into a better world in the future. Among the 10,000 is back to fiction again, and it is the story of a family that's basically beginning to fall apart. And the thing that really puts them over the edge is a packet arrives one day in the mail. Their 11-year-old daughter opens it. It's a box full of emails that their father has exchanged with another woman. So it devastates the family, and it's basically you watch the whole family disintegrate. Certainly the Sun is, Paula McLean wrote a book a few years ago called The Paris Wife, and she captured so perfectly the life and the styles and the people that were in Paris. This book, Circling the Sun, is set in Kenya in the 20s and takes the story. I don't know whether any of you know much about Beryl Markham. She was an aviatrix, and also the man for which Out of Africa was written. And it's a novel, but it has these very real characters that all are intertwined. And it is a stunning portrait of Kenya and East Africa and the English that colonized it, the hard life that they went through to try and make something, and then once it's been established, the glamour that actually Kenya was for a period of time. I haven't quite finished it yet. This was what I was reading over the weekend before I had to start shoveling snow. And so I'm dying to get back to it. But if you are interested in Beryl Markham, there is a book that was written a number of years ago. It's a biography of her called Desert Queen. And it's a fabulous biography. It's in paperback now. I'm sure you've got the trade paperback. Black Eyed Susan's great thriller. A young woman who was the only survivor of a serial killer 10 years previously. The man is caught, put in jail, fast forward 10 years, and called the Black Eyed Susan Killer because he would plant Black Eyed Susans in the yard of the woman that he was about to murder. And they would come up, of course, after the woman was murdered. She wakes up one day 10 years later. She's got her own family. She's got a teenage daughter. She looks out her window, and there are Black Eyed Susans growing under her window. And she really has to realize, she starts to think, has she put the wrong person in jail on death row? Because this was not a well-known, the whole Black Eyed Susan thing was kept quiet by the police. And here, there's Black Eyed Susans growing again. and she fears for the life of her daughter. And finally, Voices in the Ocean. Susan Casey wrote a couple of books, In Devil's Teeth and The Wave. And The Wave talked about, it was a little bit of two different subjects. It was these crazy surfers who surfed those gigantic waves, Liam Hamilton, and also a study of what makes those gigantic waves, why these occur. This is a wonderful look at dolphins. And were you aware that dolphins can recognize themselves in reflections, count, feel despondent, adorn themselves, rescue one another, deduce, infer, form cliques, throw tantrums, gossip, and scheme. And they're amazing creatures. We all know, we've read stories about, how remarkable dolphins actually are. On the flip side, I don't know if anyone has seen that documentary, The Cove, about the slaughter of dolphins, the Japanese fishing industries, that they'll just routinely grab dolphins as well, and they'll just slaughter them rather than setting them free. So it's a beautiful, intimate portrait of dolphins, how wonderful they are, and how we are really taking advantage of them. I skipped Bradstreet Gate. This is a book set at Harvard, and it's a novel, and it's about these three kids that are graduating from Harvard, and their fourth friend is murdered. They're not suspected, but they're very well known, very outgoing professor is suspected of the crime, though never charged. Fast forward 10 years, these kids are still trying to get their lives together. They're all having difficulties because of what they've gone through with the murder of their friend. The professor's life has gone to shambles, and it's just a study on how 4 lives just disintegrated from one horrific event. And I think that's it. I hope there were some books that you think you might want to look into when they come into the library. If you have any questions, I'll be hanging around while people eat up there. Well, there's a few cupcakes back there. And thank you so much for letting me talk to you about that.
Thank you very much to Lesley for coming and doing a wonderful presentation for us. We really do appreciate it. Before we do a couple other raffles, I just want to say thank you to the friends of the library, a very hardworking small group of volunteers who make things like these happen and brings in wonderful refreshments. So we're really appreciative of them and all what they do for us. Also want to thank, we have 15 and 15 committee and all volunteers who wanted to come and be a part of this, and we really do appreciate that as well. And thank you for coming out as a community to show that we can all just get together, read, do something fun for ourselves. It's free, it's easy, and let's just keep this going. Go home, get excited about reading. Our next program is in April. You'll find out more about that, but just take the time for yourself and enjoy reading. And come to the library.